effectively imposes upon our government a binding obligation to manage the economy faithfully and well. That is why we had to establish a very firm economic platform in South Africa. And that is why we were able, through prudent economic management, to move the stagnated economy of South Africa that had been in that state for 20 years and move it towards, change. That is why we no longer depend on mining, because when this government came into power, mining was the major activity, one of the major activities. But we find that because of the economic platform that we have set up in South Africa, mining has, for instance, been overtaken by tourism. Tourism now produces much more revenue than mining in South Africa. We think that that is a great achievement. We also find that because of the economic platform, we find that, for instance, today one of the strong sources of income in South Africa is from the manufacture of automotive car parts, which we export, among other places, through the American Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which we export to the United States. So what we did in South Africa is we diversified our economy, and we continue to diversify our economy, especially seeking to expand the manufacturing sector. And at the present moment, our economy, we are focused on the building of an infrastructure, a stronger infrastructure, because what has happened is that the economic development has outstripped the infrastructure that we have in South Africa today. So we need to expand our electricity generation. We need more roads. We need to set up other areas of employment, because, again, one of the setbacks in all the progress that we have made is that we have very high unemployment. We have great prosperity. We have high unemployment. We have great infrastructure, telecommunications, financial, etc., which is very similar to a first world infrastructure, but on the other hand, we have great poverty, and we have people who are living still in not even a developing economy, but an underdeveloped economy. We have great disparities of wealth, and unfortunately those disparities of wealth are still significant in terms of racial factors. So we have a very wealthy minority white population and a very poor black majority population. And for the government of South Africa, we see this as a great danger to the future of our democracy. Hence, all the efforts that we are making to accelerate growth in our economy so that our people who have been oppressed can have an opportunity to participate in the economy as well. That is why we have black economic empowerment in South Africa, and I'm just going to run through that quickly. You can ask me afterwards, because I think we need to move so that we can actually exchange views. The global economy, or I should say internationally, investors have responded very well to South Africa, not as well as we wanted in 1994 when we came into power. But 10 years later, after we've proved that we can run a government, that we can collect more taxes than was ever thought possible, that we don't have any, debts. I think debts constitute about 3% of our total GDP, which is very, very, very low. We have less debts than the US, of course. And we have shown that we can do this, and because we've shown that we can manage our economy, what is happening is that there's a spurt of growth and a great spurt of investments. And tomorrow we will be speaking at the Chamber of Commerce, and we will be asking UTA to invest in South Africa as well, because there are great returns to be had in South Africa. I think that I should mention one thing, which is that the South African government, because it is wedded to the welfare of our people, we have spent a great amount of money on housing, on sanitation, on public education, on health, and we have found that it is not enough, because the legacy of apartheid is a very great one, and we are not able to cover up the disparities as fast as we would like to. Particularly, we have been cursed with the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and many of our people are suffering from HIV/AIDS, or they have been infected by it. And the government has a program. We do not believe that HIV only needs to be focused on ARVs. We do supply ARVs to people now, but we think also prevention is very important. And as such, the government has been on a program to encourage the prevention of HIV, but we also do link disease to poverty. And we feel very strongly that it is just as important for us to have sanitation, to have clean water, to have good housing for people, because no matter how many pills you give people, if they do not have clean water, they cannot get well. So we think that poverty eradication is a very important aspect of development. Finally, I just want to say that we believe very strongly that we are a part of Africa, and that the development of Africa is as important to our prosperities as it is to that of other African countries. As such, we have used our own resources, our own government resources, to deal with the question of conflict in Africa. So, for instance, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we have played a role with our own resources in getting the people of the Congo to speak to each other and to have peace. The result is that elections will be held there for the first time. Democratic elections will be held there, we hope, at the end of June. And to us, that is very important, because we think that you cannot unlock the wealth of those countries unless there is peace. You have to have peace and stability. So that is why South Africa has been involved in bringing in peacemaking and peacekeeping in places like Darfur, in places like Rwanda, Burundi, the Congo, Liberia, because we feel that the future of Africa lies in bringing about peace, because you cannot have development without peace. We have very good relations with the United States government, and as I have mentioned before, the African Growth and Opportunity Act has given a great deal of trade access, not only to South Africa, but to many African countries. And through PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Program for AIDS Relief, we've also received quite a bit of assistance. There are a great number of cooperation programs that we have. And I'm delighted to hear that here in this university, there are so many students who not only have been to South Africa or are working in South Africa, but are in Africa and the world, because that is also very important for peace, for development. It is very, very important. And I hope that your university continues to do the good work that it is doing, and that you will be worthy of the name of your university. And thank you again for having me here, and I'm ready to entertain your questions. I want women to ask questions too.
Sorry, women.
Don't be sorry. It's okay.
My name's Dave Kay, and I had two questions to ask. First off, I just wanted to say congratulations on the 2010 World Cup. I'm very excited about that. I think that's going to be amazing. First off, I read an article in The Economist last week that talked a little bit about economic policy in South Africa, and the author mentioned that the president was thinking about implementing some policies similar to FDR's New Deal to try to create jobs for the informal sector. And I was wondering if you had any comments to make on that.
Yeah. The comments I have is that, of course, we also hope that in the implementation of the public works programs, we will also be giving skills to people. Because one of the legacies of apartheid is that we have not got modern workers. They are not trained. They are not skilled. And of course, this is a technological era, which means that they are not able to take advantage even of the opportunities that are there. But also just in terms of running our local governments, running hospitals, etc., you need technological skills for that. So yes, the public works program is intended also to kind of inject some energy and acceleration into growing the economy.
Okay.
I saw lots of questions at the back there.
Just had one more question. Sorry. I'm being told to pass it around. Okay.
I see all of you want to be recorded for posterity. Otherwise, you just speak.
I was just wondering what is being done throughout the country, providing education for those that are in poverty-stricken areas.
We are building schools. Education is free in South Africa up to the age of 16 years old. But of course, because of the legacy that we have, one of the areas that is very, very much wanting is science teaching, because there was no emphasis on teaching science before. And again, that means that people cannot really function in a modern world if they don't have a strong scientific education, foundation at least. So the government is building schools. We are training people We are having programs of cooperation with American universities, quite a number of American universities. For instance, the large telescope that we just built, it's called the South African Large Telescope in the Karoo. It's one of the biggest in the world and the most accurate, And it was built with the assistance of scientists at the University of Wisconsin and at Rutgers University and other universities internationally. But we still have, as I said earlier, we still have children going to school under trees in dilapidated buildings. And we think that is something that should end immediately. But, you don't build a school by saying you're going to build it, Even when you have the money and the people to build it, to build a school takes a certain amount of time. We are very proud of the 1.6 million houses that we've built. We wish we could have built 6 million houses, but we know also that it is not possible to do that in 10 years' time. So there are the human, constraints that are there to what is possible. It's not like just, a wand that you say, I want 5 million houses. Fortunately, we don't have to borrow money. We do have the money. So it's the skills. And the public works program comes in there too, because it is those people who are trained in the public works program who will also help to build those public buildings. Yes, sir.
Perhaps this is a question that is a little too delicate or inappropriate
Nothing
to
is
ask.
delicate.
Thank you. Okay. Are there efforts within your country trying to help the devastation going on in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, we have got efforts. In fact, we have been involved in trying to encourage the Zimbabweans to solve their problems. We feel very strongly that we cannot interfere in the affairs of Zimbabwe. We cannot go in there, and we know what we would like to happen in Zimbabwe, but we cannot coerce it. And my president has been much vilified for his for his private, quiet diplomacy policy. But under the circumstances, there is not very much more we can do than to really very strongly encourage the Zimbabweans to bring about democracy in their country. And also, I think people have to understand from another point of view that, for instance, in South Africa, it is estimated at the present moment that there are more than 2 million Zimbabweans in South Africa living and working there. And that means Zimbabweans of all kinds that you can imagine. And so we have to take into account the stability of our own country as well. And we have to move with caution, whatever we do. But the policy that informs us is that you cannot coerce democracy. That democracy is something that has to come from the people in a country.
Now,
I think we have to ask short questions now because we have very little time left.
Okay, you mentioned that during apartheid, 87% of the land was taken and given to the white minority in South Africa. And in the process of there's something called restitution in the process of repentance or some type of reconciliation. And then how did you expect reconciliation to occur among South Africans during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when part of this land was not going to be given back to these people?
Because unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, you can never return to the past, because the land that was taken and given to the whites, it didn't just sit there. They had farms on it, they had mines on it, they had property development on it, etc., etc. So it was part and parcel of the economic fabric of South Africa. So when you go back, you don't say, I'm going to destroy this farm and take this land back and give it back to the, people who had it before. But you seek some means, because part of the responsibility of the government is to have a stable economy. Absolutely. So that is why we didn't take the mines away from the mine owners, because the mines employed thousands, hundreds and thousands of South Africans who were supporting hundreds and thousands of other people who were their family. We would have loved to say, these mines are ours, this money is ours, but you don't do that, So that's why we had a constitution. That's why in our constitution we said that we will not appropriate property. That's why in our constitution we have a business sector which makes sure that when you invest money in South Africa, nobody is going to have the right to come and take your business away. That is why we are having so many people coming to invest in South Africa, because they know there is law and order in South Africa. That's why we have a separation between state and the judiciary. And it is an independent judiciary, because all those things in the end, they hang together to make a stable society. And that's why we have a Land Reform Act, which is trying to, return land to people where it is feasible. If you have a platinum mine working and you get millions or billions of tax from that platinum mine, you are not going to destabilize it by taking it over, but you are going to let it continue, functioning, but ensure that the people who work there get paid better, that the people who own it pay more tax, that they teach the people skills to run that mine, etc., etc. I know we don't have enough time to discuss this, but it's the craft of state, of running states. You don't destroy in order to just satisfy your emotions, but your responsibility as a person who runs a government is to see to it that people continue to have a stable life. I want you to come here because you seem to be partial to that part of the room. But I will be partial to that lady first, and then you can come this side. Yeah.
Thank you. You mentioned the HIV/AIDS crisis that's going on, and I know that South Africa is facing a problem with orphans, and I was just wondering what sort of policies and programs that the government has in regards to that.
We're trying very hard to get our communities, to train our communities, to help to look after the victims or the vulnerable people. But it's very difficult because more and more in the world there's interrelation. What we are finding, for instance, is that the majority of the people who have been trained in South Africa as doctors and nurses, and this is black and white, doctors, nurses, etc., are leaving South Africa, have left South Africa. I went to Boston the other time. I discovered that there were 190 medical doctors in Boston alone. I don't know how many South African medical doctors, engineers, scientists, etc., there are in the United States, Australia, UK, etc., etc. So you have that, and then you have this pandemic of AIDS. So we are forced now, not forced, we have to depend on the strengths that we have. One of the great strengths, I'm sure, as people who have been in South Africa will tell you that we have in South Africa is our people really volunteer. there is great volunteerism in South Africa. And if you go to the rural villages now, where there are all these AIDS orphans, it is the the community people, nurses, teachers, and ordinary people who are helping these AIDS orphans, to build their lives, to go to school, to eat properly, to have their vaccination, because many of these homes are headed by children, So it's an area of challenge, especially for your missionary community as well. I'd like to give a chance to somebody here, and I think this gentleman had his hand up first, Mr. Weezy. What? What's that? Weezer.
That's something else. Well, Western culture, I guess. I had a question about. I was in South Africa at the time. I was pretty young at the time when the government changed, when Nelson Mandela took power. And I talked to some people there, especially the whites, and then I moved on. And I lived in England and London for a couple of years, and I met many white young men leaving South Africa because of economic, perhaps social problems. What is being done about keeping those people in South Africa, involving them, including them in the communities?
We are in the process of trying to bring back as many South Africans as we can to come and assist, especially with infrastructural programs in the townships, electricity, industry, everywhere. But I think, to be fair also, there has to be an admission that many white South Africans left because they thought that a black government could not run the country. They also thought that they were also cynical or skeptical about stability. They thought there would be a bloodbath, and that has just been proved untrue. And many of them are sorry that they left, and they are coming back. And they are being welcomed back because it's their country. They are citizens of that country. Obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, racial equality is something that you work at. Even here in the United States, where, you've had the civil rights movement a long time ago, you're still working at racial equality. You're still working at racial understanding. We are only 12 years old in South Africa. We're only 12 years old, and in that 12 years, we have achieved a lot, and we hope that we can achieve even more. You are a South African. Yes. I knew.
He's also not going to get posterity.
And you too? No? Okay. All right.
Your Excellency, I just wanted to ask, are there any measures that are being taken maybe to keep the professionals in the country? As you've said, there's a problem of brain drain, which is very inimical, and it does not contribute in any way toward economic development, because that's one of the things that we're interested in is economic development, and it'll be good if the trained, skilled professionals stay in the country. Now, are there any measures like probably maybe upping or maybe increasing or maybe giving better remuneration schemes to make sure that we retain these professionals?
Yeah. It's very difficult. I understand. I mean, government, for instance, is losing a lot of because of development. So you find that the civil servants themselves are also going. Government trains them, and then they go to the private sector where they get more money. You find that there's a lot of complaint from the poor about the high salaries that those who earn salaries are getting. So there are always competing needs. And the challenge that South African government has is that it has to, improve society across the board. It's not one area. It's not to say it's our medical, it's our teachers, it's our public services, it's banking, it's everything. Everything needs improvement, and there are those competing needs. And I think that we are doing quite well, considering that the amount this year, the South African IRS, SARS, we call it, South African Revenue Services, collected a record amount of taxes. There is even a surplus of funds, but that has enabled us to be able to give grants to children and to those who are really indigent, But that means that we are now beginning to experience the problems of a social welfare state, where people begin to see how they can manipulate the social welfare system. That means that we are now having fraud. But that means the police have to look at that, and the police themselves need training because they were trained to fight dissidents, not to do police. So we are also doing, development in that area. So what I'm trying to show you is that everything is related to another thing. And it's a major. But we consider ourselves very fortunate in South Africa because at least we have some resources to meet these challenges. But if you look at our other African countries, they simply don't have the resources, And I think, when you look at countries like Malawi, Malawi has lost all its doctors. I think they have one doctor to every something like 24,000 people in Malawi. And they have major illnesses there, including AIDS. And they have no income. So what do you do? So I think that when we look at South Africa, we must look at it in terms of the realities, We must look at it in terms of the realities. And it's doing well. But of course the people are impatient. They want change now, yesterday. Thank you.